My name is Victoria Chen. I'm 32, and for the last 8 years, I've been becoming someone my family never bothered to know. With a weight of finality, the mahogany courthouse doors swung open, and I felt every eye in the packed gallery turn my way. At the defendant's table sat my younger brother Marcus, his expensive suit wrinkled from a night in holding, his lawyer whispering frantically into his ear. Behind him, our parents clutched each other with the desperate hope of people who had built their entire identity around the success of their golden son. When Marcus was arrested, none of them had called me. Not when the federal charges were filed. Not when his tech company's government contracts suddenly came under investigation for fraud. They only reached out 3 days ago when his bail hearing was scheduled and they needed anyone to vouch for his character. Vicky still owes us that much. I'd heard my mother say on the voicemail she'd accidentally left while talking to my father. She may be a disappointment, but she's family. A disappointment. That word had followed me through my childhood like a shadow, whispered at family dinners when my grades weren't quite as perfect as Marcus's, spoken aloud when I enlisted in the army instead of going to law school like they'd planned. It was the last thing my father said to me 8 years ago when I left for basic training. I hope you're happy being a disappointment to this family. I hadn't spoken to them since. Now, walking down the center aisle of the federal courthouse, I could feel their confusion. My mother's eyes tracked my movement, taking in the crisp navy suit, the confident stride, the way other people in the gallery, people in expensive suits and military dress uniforms, nodded respectfully as I passed. She looked puzzled, almost offended, as if I were playing dress-up in a world that didn't belong to me. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet Morrison whom I'd worked with before, caught my eye and gave a barely perceptible nod. We had discussed this moment extensively. Marcus's case wasn't just about embezzlement. It was about selling classified information to foreign entities. Information he'd obtained through his government contracts. Information that had compromised ongoing operations and put assets at risk. My assets. Judge Harrison took his seat, and the room fell silent. The court will now hear character witnesses for the defendant, Marcus Chun. My father rose first, his voice shaking as he spoke about his son's brilliance, his contributions to technology, his bright future. My mother followed, tearful and pleading, painting Marcus as a misunderstood genius who'd simply made poor business decisions. Then Marcus's college roommate testified, and his business partner, and 3 other people who spoke of his charity work and community involvement. Each testimony felt like another nail in the coffin of truth, another layer of the golden boy mythology that had suffocated our family for decades. When they finished, Judge Harrison looked up. "Does the prosecution wish to present any witnesses?" "Yes, Your Honor." The prosecution calls Victoria Chun. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the color drain from my mother's face as she processed what she'd heard. My father's mouth fell open. Marcus, for the first time since I'd entered the courtroom, turned to look at me directly, his confident smirk fading into confusion. I rose and walked to the witness stand, my hand steady as I placed it on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. "Please state your name and occupation for the record," Morrison said. "Victoria Chun. I'm a special agent with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division." The words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Behind me, I heard my mother gasp. My father made a choking sound. Marcus stared at me as if I were a stranger, which I realized to him I was. "Agent Chun. How long have you been with the Bureau?" 8 years. I joined after completing my service with Army Intelligence. "And what is your current assignment?" "I lead a joint task force focused on preventing the theft and sale of classified government technology to foreign entities." Morrison nodded. "Agent Chun, are you familiar with the defendant?" I looked directly at Marcus, holding his gaze. "Yes. He's my brother." The next 20 minutes were a careful dance of classified and unclassified information. I testified about the investigation, about the months of surveillance, about the evidence that had led to Marcus's arrest. I spoke in the calm, measured tone I'd perfected over years of briefing senators and cabinet members. But inside I was 8 years old again, watching my parents beam with pride as Marcus won another science fair, while barely glancing at my own second-place ribbon. "Agent Chun," Morrison continued, "in your professional opinion, do you believe the defendant poses a flight risk?" "Absolutely. The defendant has made contact with foreign handlers in 3 different countries. He has offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, and based on our surveillance, he was planning to leave the country the day after his arrest. I saw Marcus's lawyer scribbling frantically, saw my parents gripping each other's hands so tightly their knuckles were white. They were beginning to understand that this wasn't their disappointing daughter playing at being important. This was someone else entirely. Someone they'd never bothered to know. Thank you, Agent Chen. No further questions. Marcus's lawyer stood for cross-examination. But what could he ask? How could he attack the credibility of an FBI counterintelligence agent without destroying his client's case entirely? Agent Chen, he began carefully, isn't it true that you and your brother have been estranged? Yes. Isn't it possible that personal animosity is coloring your professional judgment? I smiled. The same smile I'd used in interrogation rooms with foreign spies. The one that said I knew things they couldn't even imagine. Counselor, my personal feelings don't manufacture offshore bank accounts or create communications with known foreign intelligence operatives. The evidence speaks for itself. When I stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom was silent except for the soft sound of my mother crying. I walked back to my seat in the gallery, and this time, every eye that followed me held a different expression. Respect, fear, recognition. After the hearing, I stood in the courthouse hallway, checking my phone for messages from my team. My parents approached hesitantly, looking like strangers in their own lives. Vicky, my mother whispered. Is it true? Are you really? My name is Victoria, I said without looking up from my phone. And yes, it's true. My father cleared his throat. We had no idea. You never told us. You never asked, I said, finally looking at them. These people who'd raised me but never known me. In 8 years, neither of you asked what I did for work. You assumed I was still the disappointment who couldn't live up to Marcus's potential. But honey, my mother said, reaching toward me, if we'd known you were so successful you would have, what? Been proud of me? Loved me? I shook my head. I didn't become successful for you. I became successful despite you. Marcus appeared then, flanked by his lawyer and 2 federal marshals. His bail had been denied. He would be held pending trial, facing 25 years in federal prison. As they led him past us, he stopped. Vicky, he said, using the diminutive name that had always made me feel small. You have to know I never meant for anyone to get hurt. People did get hurt, Marcus. Assets were compromised. Operations were blown. People I've worked with for years had to be pulled out of dangerous situations because of the information you sold. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear my next words. And my name is Special Agent Chen. The marshals led him away, and I watched my parents' world crumble in real time. Everything they believed about their children, about success, about worth, all of it was collapsing around them. Victoria, my father said, his voice broken. I'm sorry. We're both sorry. We were wrong about you. I studied his face, looking for something I'd needed to see there for 32 years. But apologies offered only when forced by circumstance aren't really apologies at all. I know you are, I said quietly. But sorry doesn't change 8 years of silence. Sorry doesn't erase 32 years of being told I wasn't enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my director. Great work on the Chung case. Need you back in DC tomorrow for the briefing with NSC. The National Security Council. Another meeting in the Situation Room. Another briefing for people who shaped policy at the highest levels of government. Another day in the life that my family had never bothered to ask about. I looked at my parents one last time. These strangers who'd given me life but never really knew me. I have a flight to catch, I said. Take care of yourselves. As I walked away, I heard my mother call out, Will we see you again? I paused at the courthouse doors, the same doors I'd entered an hour ago as their disappointing daughter, and was now leaving as someone they couldn't have imagined. Maybe, I said, when you figure out how to love the daughter you have, not the one you wish you'd had. The winter air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I breathed deeply for the first time in months. Behind me, the courthouse held the ruins of my brother's life and my parents' assumptions. Ahead of me waited a car that would take me to the airport, then back to DC, back to the work that mattered, back to the life I'd built one case at a time. My phone rang. My partner calling with an update on our next operation. As I answered, I caught my reflection in the courthouse windows. The woman looking back at me wasn't the disappointment my family had created in their minds. She was someone who briefed presidents, who stopped foreign intelligence operations, who carried secrets that could topple governments. She was someone I was proud to be. "Chun here," I said into the phone. And for the first time in 8 years, saying my name felt like coming home to myself. The courthouse grew smaller in the rearview mirror as my car pulled away, taking with it the last remnants of the girl who desperately wanted her family's approval. In her place sat a woman who'd learned that the most powerful revenge wasn't destroying those who'd underestimated her. It was becoming someone so extraordinary that their dismissal revealed more about them than it ever had about her. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm 32 years old and I am nobody's disappointment anymore.